Hello, everyone. Namaste. Jefferson Glassy here with Associations Creating Community Zoomcast is what we're calling it. I'm with the Whiteford Associations, Nonprofits, and Political Organizations group. And we are very happy and pleased to be able to have a conversation today with a fabulous person, someone I really, really admire and adore even, and she's had a very, very busy year. President and CEO of the American Society of Association Executives, Susan Robertson. Susan, thank you so much for joining us.
With that introduction, Jeff, thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Well, thank you. Well, you were very instrumental in us being able to do this, actually, because it was a few years ago that Blake Alphen of Human Factors, who does association podcasts, I think asked you if it was okay if he set up a table at Great Ideas out in, was that called the Colorado Ballroom? I think so.
Yeah, it was the Colorado, kind of towards the back of the International Center at the Broadmoor.
Right, set up a table so he could do podcasts. And then it might have been a year or two he did that. And then he asked me if I would help co-host a little bit. And I said, sure, because I had been doing some podcasts for these music things that we do. And then the next year he said, you want to do that again? And I said, yeah, but we need a theme, and one of the important things to me about associations is community. And I kind of got that from conversations that I had with John Graham, who, I miss every time I think about him. And he said, community is just, associations are community. And there is a podcast interview with him, and he talks about that in detail. But we wanted to really continue our participation in the community by being maybe a catalyst for conversations about community. And, ASAE and the association community is, I feel it's my home. And so we're just really glad that we're able to have this conversation. And I just want to say, how are you doing? I miss you. I miss everybody in the association community. How are things going in this year?
I think we all feel the same way. I believe I have an echo. Is it done? Anyway, I think we all feel the same way. We're lonely little networkers is what we are. Our community isn't fragmented. I'm so pleased to say that. I think in some ways it's tighter than ever, because I think there's a level of, I'll use the word intimacy, that, when you have a Zoom conversation like we're having, Jeff, there are two people and you're talking, there is a different level than you have on one of these broader Zoom calls, but I'll get to that in a minute. I think the association community, ASAE, the same, we've really suffered through the pandemic. Many associations have done really well, and it's really dependent on the industry or profession that association serves. Those who have been on the front line or representing the professions and industries on the front line have become essential. If you think about the delivery of vaccines now, and as using chain drugstores as an example, they're saving our lives through distribution and the supply chain and the many things that go into either battling this pandemic or getting us on the other side of it. Associations are essential to that. And so, if you think about community, there's almost this external community of people who are responding in real time that binds them together and also really ties them to their professional or trade association to give them the best information, the most reliable information, put them together with supplies or whatever they need in ways that they might not be able to do for themselves. So, in a roundabout way, I'm answering your question. We're doing well. It is a frustrating period of time for the very reason that we're talking about, which is we can't see each other. And that just flies in the face of, as association professionals and those associated with our community, it flies in the face of what we do. You just remember those fond days of receptions and, learning events where you were shoulder to shoulder with your peers and you had those hallway conversations where you probably learned more than you did in the session. we can't wait for those to return. And yet we have to be responsible citizens. We have to lead the way responsibly with safety in mind. And there's some risk involved in that. We've made, Jeff, we've made some really hard decisions this year. No one likes to take a live event virtual. Virtual events are great, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't replace the live experience. So, we'll talk later, I'm sure, about what we've learned out of this, what we think is going to last and stay with us, and what we can shed when the pandemic, is going to disappear, we hope. But really, we're talking about a very new normal for us. I don't even think anybody, unless they're much smarter than I am or anyone I know, knows what that looks like. It's evolving. But back to the fact that I think we're lonely and we're just starving to be with each other. We're starving to be with our families and our friends, to go to a normal party, to go to a restaurant, to go to a bar and sit down. And at the same time, we're just craving each other as a community. So, but we haven't abandoned that idea of community in our virtual reality. And I'm sure we'll get to that point when you ask more questions.
Well, I want to just kind of go back for a minute, because life sort of did change about a year ago. The reason I have this picture of the mountains of Nepal in the background is that when the Great Ideas was happening, and you did hold the meeting, it was in March.
Right.
I was in Nepal, India and Nepal, for a month. And, we started hearing some things that were going on, and I knew that there was something going on, but it was also new, and we kind of, we actually got some of the last flights out of Kathmandu, our little trekking group that we were with, came back and just dropped into a pandemic and couldn't go to the store and all those kinds of things. So, from that perspective, you had the meeting, but all of a sudden you had to sort of switch everything off and go into kind of virtual mode with your staff and with everyone. I mean, how does that, in retrospect, how does that feel? It was certainly very disruptive of the community, if you want to say that.
Sure, it was. ASAE specific, not only were we facing down a pandemic that we thought maybe a couple of weeks. Honestly, I think we all thought that, and then we'll be back to normal. But our then CEO, John Graham, who you kindly mentioned earlier, had passed away in January. So we had, said goodbye as a community to him. Change of leadership at ASAE, and that's where I came in. And then all of a sudden the pandemic hit. I will say that my insecurity around this was that we had never tested the model of working remotely. Tout ensemble, everybody. And so I didn't know if it was going to work. I'm going to make myself sound so old school, but I'm always suspicious. Not now, but then. When someone works from home, oh yeah, right. You're doing your life, you're doing whatever. And now I have all the confidence in the world in remote work. So what's happened, fast forward a year, is a change in thinking on my part. There's a lot of change in thinking. But yeah, ASAE was reeling, and I think the community too, because and I'm not saying this out of ego, not personal, but organizational ego. ASAE kind of lies at the epicenter of how the heartbeat of the association community goes: weak, strong, fast, slow. And a lot of organizations were looking to us to say, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to take that plunge and work from, are you going to shut your offices? And we did it, I think, in tandem with many organizations, because it just made good sense. It wasn't that we were taking a leadership role. But that is an important bridge to what happened directly after that. Is ASAE has always tried to serve as a model for the community. And here we found ourselves with our community not having any kind of guidelines, playbook, experience with anything like this. On a personal and professional level, we were pretty raw. And so community, I'm backing into your subject, but it's important. That's what we led with. There were two prongs to our approach to the pandemic. One was to advocate for the association community to get every kind of inclusion in whatever federal relief and financial programs would be available. And that was a long slog, but we won for the Paycheck Protection Program. Now we're turning our attention to workforce and other kinds of legislation that are on the docket. But at the same time, we knew that our strength was in the community. And if we were going to serve as any kind of a help, not a model, but a help, we would convene as often and on subjects that were a higher impact faster than ever before. And what we kind of shed was that skin that ASAE has always had about being perfect. You know, we will develop something and just polish the apple until it's perfect before we, you know, present it and say, here it is. But we had to divest ourselves of that because things were moving so quickly. Issues were surfacing, the need to convene on certain subjects and to learn from each other and to create a path forward, that eclipsed everything else. And so the lesson we learned out of that is, well, several lessons. One, Susan learned that yes, the ASAE staff can work remotely and get the job done in a different way, but a really good way. Great lesson. Two is to be as relevant in time and not relevant, but impactful as we possibly can. And some of the other stuff, the nice to do things that we had done before were not as important. They didn't apply in that scenario. And three, this is a difficult thing to recover from, is that we had to increase our accessibility and to drop the barriers for participation. So that meant throughout the majority of this last year, we've done a lot for free. And I think anyone who knows ASAE knows that free is really had not been a part of our vocabulary as much. I even had it free, but we had to do it. And as a result of that, we were able to engage a lot more people and help a lot more people than we probably ever had before. Our participation numbers were out of this world, like never in 100 years had they been that much. And here's why I feel good about it. I don't feel good about the financial part of that, but I feel really good about ASAE's role in the recovery, you know, and how we could make a difference. And the kind of response that we got from our members was heartwarming, really. People we'd never heard from before. So I probably strayed from the subject, but there's just so much to this. So ask me another question and I'll get focused again.
There is so much to this, and you reminded me, I'd forgotten that John passed in January, and then you came in, and then the pandemic. It was really sort of brutal. And you've talked about, you know, some of the guiding principles of maintaining community through this time. Are there some things that you recall sort of specifically that had an impact on people, or that other associations that you maybe were keeping up with, or that you heard about, things that they were doing to try to really pull everybody together and, you know, and that sort of thing during this last year? You know, I know you certainly made every, you know, I attended ASAE annual virtually, and that was great. I mean, there have been other things at Consultants Forum, you know, for lawyers like us and all. But any other things that you can think of that were sort of, wow, that was really something? I mean, you know, that was in response to that community drive during the year, either ASAE or other organizations.
You know, what's interesting to me is that over time, I started to view ASAE and our role in convening parts of our community at any given time as the safe haven, as the one place that association professionals and the community could go to focus on themselves. If you think about our experience multiplied over all of the associations we serve, each and every CEO and staff was trying to make the best of their own situations. And you couldn't ask for a more urgent situation, because revenue streams were compromised, no face-to-face meetings. I mean, the things that associations do were highly compromised. So on a day-to-day basis, my assumption is that most of our members were so focused on their own industries, their own professions, and getting their organizations through what was a very unclear situation. So when they came to ASAE, they had the ability to focus on how to do the job. And so I had two really important moments. That epiphany came to me. We convened a group under our Key Professional Association Committee, KPAC. And what we decided is just to convene the group and let them talk. You know, just how are you doing this and how are you doing that? And we almost couldn't stop the conversation. And that scenario occurred again and again. If we had, more than 10 boxes in Zoom up on the screen, the conversation just took flight and it went its own path. And so to watch that kind of value just come up organically through the members, their brains, their needs, was incredibly satisfying. I mean, it almost said, let us get out of the way and let this happen. And then our role is to strip away those things that we think are sustainable lessons through this time, and then those things that are of the moment, and both things occurred. The other time that was really poignant was right after the George Floyd murder. That's in front of our faces right now because of the trial, but when that actually occurred, rather than convening the community around what are we going to do about the pandemic, our role was to convene the community around the difficult conversation about racial injustice. And I can say, that took place on two levels. One, it was with the staff to acknowledge that pain, and two, it was with the community. We had some really skilled facilitators from the Ivy Group who know how to have those difficult conversations. But as a white woman CEO, I found myself in a situation I'd never been in before, which is, how do I talk to a multiracial group of people as staff with any credibility about what has happened and what we can do about it and how we can feel about it. And so, I tried to make others' words not my own, but read through others' words. I know Irving Washington, and
Yes.
the moment of that and that morning, he posted on Facebook probably one of the most eloquent messages about how he felt about all of this.
Yeah, I remember that.
It was amazing, and it was so personal, and I thought, these are the words that need to be said. It doesn't matter what I think. And I read those words to our staff, and I said, so I want to open the conversation. I'm telling you, Jeff, the stories, the experiences, the emotion that erupted, it was one of the most profound moments of my leadership, my career, in how people were hurting and how they were willing to talk about it. And the same then writ large when we convened the association community around those very same issues, I think was just the beginning of all of these conversations that have had to take place in light of racial injustice, and then the striving for, the need for inclusivity. I feel that ASAE has a tremendous amount of work to do and an opportunity in an inclusive environment and making sure that people know that. And I think that is really, really related to community and building a diverse and a spectacularly vibrant community. And I think that's one of the good things that will come out of a horrible situation. But it's a long tail. There's no way to turn on a switch and just say, let's be inclusive. You've got to do it over time. We're fortunate because we've been dedicated to DEI, really diversity to begin with, then equity, then inclusion. We've built on those for a number of years, but now we're in an action mode. We have to prove it. So those two things really come to the surface as poignant for me.
Yeah, very interesting. If an orchestra had all tubas, it would be really awful, boring, and it's, to recognize that everyone is improved by the more different sorts of input and perspectives that we have. I guess this, in many ways, this pandemic has been one of those situations that seems awful and certainly has been very tough for many of the frontline people. And we're also grateful that, we can be here and work, and folks have been out there in the healthcare industry and the food service and transit and shipping and all these things. We're just so grateful for what they've done. But it's been tough, and one of the things that has come out of it is it does seem to be sort of an appreciation or gratitude for what we do have. We've had some conversations, with our lawyers. Obviously, everybody's just been stuck the same way, but there's much more of a tendency when you do have a call, and I agree that the Zoom and the being able to have video, add that layer of connection, to say, well, yeah, how are you doing, by the way? And, I like to, to me, a very successful business lunch is where you don't talk business at all.
Yeah,
that's not the way for everybody. and there's been a lot more people opening up. I've been on calls with Zoom calls or Teams or whatever with clients, and they'll start saying, well, how's it for you? How are things going? And you feel a deeper connection. And so being able to embrace that, I think, as part of who we are is really important, and emphasizes the need for community. What they say, out of any problem that there's always sort of gifts for you. Looking, it's not totally in the rear view mirror,
Yeah.
but but do you think that there are things that you've learned, either personally, or ASAE, or from meetings or whatever, that you've done, that we've done, that will be viewed as, wow, thank God we were able to do that, and we don't have to do the other stuff anymore? Things that have been opportunities for improvement. Do any come to mind in terms of ASAE or the community building? I mean, I know meetings is a big issue. That's what we're all about. Boy, I wish we were going to be in Dallas this year, but it's just.
I know. We were so looking forward to that being sort of the gateway of the comeback, and it just, for a number of reasons, and mostly because of the comfort level of attendees actually getting on a plane and coming to Dallas. For those who had to travel, we weren't as optimistic about that. Could we have had a live meeting in Dallas? Sure, but would it have delivered the kind of experience that Dallas expected? First of all, you know that when a city comes to the table to host our annual meeting, they bring a lot of assets forward. We're not cheap to host, and it takes a huge commitment on the part of the city, multi-year commitment. And so is that fair to Dallas in these times? Probably not. I'm not going to make any assumptions, but and is it fair to the attendee whose expectations for an annual meeting might be something that's based on the past? So that leads me to my point, which is, I think it's a whole new ballgame where we have to recover together. So using the relationship between associations and the destinations and venues that they choose for meetings, and the way in which hotels have come to the table, destinations have come to the table with forgiveness of fees and of locked-in dates, and move those things forward, literally saves associations from year to year. So that partnership, those relationships can't be understated or overstated, excuse me. And that's going to be the way it is when we go forward together and start to open up slowly. What we have to be mindful of as associations is what's possible at the local level, because the number of people you can convene, the protocols that are asked for and in place, they're all individual. Some are common, but we have to convene according to those rules, and then create a story with that destination or hotel that will increase an attendee's comfort and security in traveling and coming to a meeting. That's not going to happen overnight. In a way, I'm glad that there's a slow roll to the number of people that you can convene live, because that will give more and more people, as it sort of radiates out from that, more comfort and confidence in coming back and being with a group of people or getting on a plane. I've heard it said, because, obviously we're really plugged into the events industry, and this is nothing new. Those who are plugged in know this fact, but that tourism will rebound faster than business meetings. And if you think about it as an individual, which sort of leads to the personal side of this, is there's probably more pent-up demand and desire to go on vacation and get the heck out of your home than ever before, right? And so people are just like, where can we go? What can we do that isn't in the four walls of my own home and my yard, or going to the grocery store? So I do believe that's true. And if there's a residual benefit of people going on personal vacations, it will be they can also go to meetings. So, ASAE has formed very strong bonds with U.S. Travel, the U.S. Chambers of Commerce. Typically, we kind of do our own thing. No, we come together to fight this fight and get, one, relief for associations, but two, to restore that confidence and make travel safe and acceptable again. So, that's kind of the business side of it. If you strip away all of the other stuff, I would say that the lessons to ASAE as an organization is more about relevancy and expectations. the expectations of our members have changed. You know, what they expect ASAE to do has changed. There are some things that stay the same. This is my professional home. It's what I love for people to think about ASAE. If I have a home in the association profession, there it is. And as such, when you enter into that house, what do you expect us to do? And I would say, you know, we've always tried to do the best. I've called them like the jumbo shrimp experiences. You know, when you have all the food and beverage and everything's wonderful. I think people want to get together and have it have a deeper meaning. And dollars are scarce now, so you can't just go to a conference to go to a conference. You've got to go because you're going to learn something that's going to improve the way you do your job, and it's going to benefit your organization. Otherwise, you're not going to spend the money. And once you get there, if there are nice things that go along with it, great, but you're there for the content, and you're there to connect with others like you, you know, others who are in this profession. And those things call the cadence. They really, really do. So, you know, you consider something like the annual meeting, that might change the way it feels and have it be closer to the bone. And I actually think that's a good thing. So, you know, and on a personal level, I'd say that people's values and what's important have changed dramatically through this COVID environment. You know, you can't see your friends, you can't see your family, you can't do all the stuff that you used to do without even thinking about it. It makes you really a different person and value those things a little bit differently. I, for one, I'll be honest with you, you know, we were all travel nuts, you know, in this business. We're always on an airplane going somewhere, doing something. And that can be great. I crave it now. I think we all do. Give me a plane. You know, I watch the news and I'll see somebody broadcasting from Reagan Airport, and I'm like, oh, I miss. Who would ever miss an airport? I miss the United Club. That's just stupid, but it's true. But it's also grounded me to be grounded. You know, it's been a unique opportunity to be home and to rediscover things about that. So, you know, it's a mixed bag, but I think on the whole, people will emerge with their values pretty well known to them. You know, there's probably not a lot of room to be superficial after we've gone through this.
I think you're so right. And I'm hopeful that people do kind of come away with, you know, maybe a deeper meaning about life or perspectives on things. I totally agree with what you've been saying that way. And it certainly, ASAE has been, you know, even though I'm a lawyer, it's been my professional home and community. And I've recognized that for a while. And John, with some of the things that he said, helped me realize the importance of that. You know, we've been, you know, looking forward to, you know, getting back together and, you know, going to receptions and all those sorts of things as well. But, you know, I want to really thank you and ASAE for the things that you've done. And I agree that, you know, it's kind of like we can build back better, you know.
We can.
We can make things more meaningful for people, and maybe just even recognizing the value of community for associations is it's really struck home now. Of course, you know, I believe that association executives are some of the smartest people in the world, and that the governance abilities that you all have are, you know, it's not, if you just own a business, you can just tell people what to do. But if you've got to sort of manage a business that's run by people who are volunteers, it's not easy. And you know, association executives, in my mind, sort of rule the world. And I'm very thankful for everything that associations do, and we're happy to be part of the community.
Well, you've supported so many things that, you know, I can speak to ASAE, but I think that the broader theme here is that you understand the importance of associations and feel that, you know, as a for-profit business, when you make a decision to invest your time or your money in things other than your own business, they have to matter. And so, you know, you've been at the table for our innovation grants programs and supporting that. And, you know, now we're to the point where there's so many projects that have sprung up throughout the association community that we can point to and say, you know, that made a difference for that association, and this association learned from it. There's a real lovely radiant effect from that. And so, companies, for-profit organizations like yours, who get that, really do swim in the same waters as the rest of this community, the professional community. And thank God for associations right now. You'd want to talk about the power of associations. Everyone is called into action to help us overcome this pandemic and also help us overcome and make progress towards racial justice. One of the things that associations are extremely good at is civil discourse. We can take a really complex problem with people who don't agree and sit down and reach a solution. And that is what we're there to broker. And if we can model that behavior for our government, as an example, or others dealing with complex problems, it goes beyond what an association does as its mission, but it's how it operates. It's how it reaches those agreements that can serve as a model. Our job, I think ASAE's job, is to magnify that, hold it up as a lens and say, it is possible to do this. If Lincoln did it, and associations can do it, then others can too. And there are many organizations who are involved in, bipartisan, rewarding bipartisan behavior. I heard it said the other day by someone who said that, Congress is made up of good people with bad incentives. I think that's probably true. So how do we change the incentives to incent bipartisan behavior? How do we promote civil discourse, which is not necessarily about community, but it is a hallmark of the way associations operate and what they do well that a lot of people don't know about.
Yeah, good governance is so important, and it's the same as good government, really. But I would also want to echo, we had many clients who they couldn't hold their meetings last year. They weren't going to hold their meetings last year, and for the most part, the hotels, even though they were really dealt sort of a short end of the stick, they really, recognized the situation and understood the way people were working. I'm sure that you saw that in spades, and I also, so they're part of the community, and we all can help and do better. And I also appreciate your focus on the DEI. I've always felt that ASAE did a great job with that, but your recognition that we can do better and we can do more and we can hold a light up to it is really important. And I hope all association execs and everybody in the community, the hotels, the lawyers, the accountants, the consultants, I know there's a big, strong consultant community.
Yeah.
We're just part of the same team, and we can really make a difference when we work together with sort of these goals of and helping, lifting everybody up and helping.
There's so many ways that we need to heal as individuals, as a country, as a world, and as organizations. They're just too numerous to even to list. But I think primary among them is to get back on that good footing where we feel like there's optimism around the future and an emerging business model that is sustainable. And the other is to make a difference in how we respect and relate to each other as human beings in this world. I mean, we have a lot going on in the U.S., no question, that we have to deal with. But if you blow that up and think about the whole world, there are a number of places where there's hurt and where there's concern and where there's strife and where there's hunger. Who better than associations to address those needs? And so I think the work of associations is getting to be better recognized, not only as sources of information and points of view and expertise that would inform good policy, but also just to make a difference in how the world runs and what it can do for itself. It's a long tail. These things don't happen overnight, but the sustainability of associations is our job, to help make sure that happens so that other work can happen. And what I've learned about ASAE through the 20 years I've been there is that sometimes you feel removed from the fight. Other associations do that, but our role is to help them do it better. And so although we're indirect as an assist to the goal, so to speak, that work is really important because the better association executives there are, the better hoteliers there are that understand where this sector is going, then we're really doing our jobs. with the maximum number of people that we can. So, sometimes it feels like a quiet thing, but it's a necessary thing. And those who get it, get it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I really appreciate your global perspective, if you will. I mean, we're kind of a global community. What's really important, we kind of need all of us to make it work. And so very, very thankful for what you've been doing. I know it's been a tough year. Well, you got a lot of people who are on your team and a lot of fans. And thanks for taking the time to be able to talk a little bit about community, which is something that's, I think very near and dear to many of our hearts. And
Yeah.
I appreciate what you've been doing, and we'll look forward
Thank
to
you. We'll
having.
just keep at it. Well, thank you
Yeah,
for doing this. These conversations are important, and I'm happy to be a part of it, and to see so many of them going on really critical issues and hard conversations. So thank you for the opportunity.
yeah. Well, thanks. I have this picture partly because I tell people I'm going to open up a Kathmandu office for the firm. And, we'd all do want to get out there and travel. So if we stick together and do what we need to do, we can make that reality.
I know. Those reunions are going to feel really good.
That's for sure.
I'm looking forward to hugging a palm tree at some point.
Great. Susan Robertson with ASAE, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. This has been our association's Creating Community Zoomcast. We encourage everybody to get out there and have these kind of conversations, and let's try to improve our community. Thanks very much.
Thank you.